issue of needing kids to know that they really do need to finish matric. Now, the unemployment rate has hardly changed, even though so many jobs were lost, and that's partly because people are dropping out. In other words, they're not even coming in fact. Young people are leaving school, and they're staying out of the labor market. And it's rational because there aren't jobs available. But we're effectively losing. We're letting go. We have a very large youth population. We have a social nightmare on our hands and an economic nightmare. Those are people who are supposed to be starting households, maybe having a partner, having children in a family situation, getting a house, working, contributing, hopefully retiring at some point with some kind of savings. That is not where these people are going at this point. So coming up with creative strategies to try to get youth active is not just a feel-good issue. It is something that is so critically important right now that we should all be talking about it. Now, the critical problem for young people is that even before the downturn, there was about a 50-50 chance of finding a job before the age of 24, whether you had a matric or not. And there's a major race dynamic to this, which is that 65% of black school leavers could not find a job before the age of 24. So that doesn't speak to a kind of laziness that people sometimes talk about. This is a reality. And so therefore, if you were in school and you were having difficulties with your teachers and you found it difficult to get through school, actually it would be pretty rational to say, what am I doing here? Maybe I should have a kid. That will give me meaning. This school's not giving me meaning. It's not going to help me to finish school, because 24 is pretty old to a 17-year-old. If a 24-year-old doesn't have a job, it means that you're never going to get a job. So that perception needs to change of kids who are in school so that they've got some sense that something can actually happen in their lives, besides maybe having a child getting into a gang and so on. Something positive. Now, the question, social grants, do they make people lazy? I get asked this every day. These are questions that get posed to me every single day. The first thing to lay out is that there is no social grant for unemployed people. I think that's the first thing to put on the table. Who gets grants? The vast majority of I think there are about 13 million people now who get grants. About 9 million of those are children under the age of 14. The next biggest group are the pensioners, and the next biggest group are the disabled. Those people actually aren't supposed to be working. That's the first thing. Now, we did a survey, and it showed, we asked about people's motivation. 50% of unemployed South Africans believe that work is essential to their meaning in life. Not to earn money, but that they don't have meaning. 88% said they feel extremely negative about being unemployed when everyone around them is also unemployed. We want to know, does it matter when the whole society is unemployed? Do people think about it? Well, they feel very badly about it. 83% of poor people say they would take a very low-paid job if they thought it would give them a leg up. So that gives a sense of motivation. There are some lazy people. There are some people who have babies because of the grants, no doubt. But the vast majority of people, we went out and asked, and they said, we're desperate to do something. So the point is, my starting assumption in any program that I'm involved in is there are enough people who want to get engaged. And certainly in my daily experience, I meet loads of people like that I think that we're not worried about the lazy people, we're worried about the people who want to get active. And there's millions of people like that. Now, just to put poverty in a context as well, working people now actually qualify for the grant. The minimum means test is, I think it's about $2,400 now a month. It changes sometimes, but I think the minimum access is $2,400 a month. Now, about 60% of people in 2007 earned $2,500 or less per month. So a very large proportion of working people would actually qualify for that grant. Now, the critical issue here is that given the number of dependents in poor households, what this means is that the majority of working people are skating very close to the poverty line, or they're below. When I say that 60% of people earn $2,500 or less, only some of those were at $2,500. Some people earn $1,000 or less. So what one has to keep in mind that even working people are below the poverty line, or near the poverty line, or just above it. And that means they're scraping together to live in a decent way. So when we're thinking about our interventions and our attitudes towards these issues, this becomes a critically important thing to understand, because these people can't make a go of life. These people are always working from crisis to crisis. I think we see it with a lot of the people that we even work with. Somebody dies, or there's a funeral, or money has to be sent. People are moving from crisis to crisis all the time. That means there's no space for asset accumulation, to improve one's life, to start training, to do anything about moving up. These people are just trying to make a go and keep on track. Now, what should be done in the long run? We sometimes make these things more complicated than they need to be. The major interventions, I think, are pretty clear. What we do about those interventions, we could say fix education. That's quite a challenge. It's not an easy thing to do, but we know we've got to fix education. There's no doubt that we're not going anywhere unless the population's educated. And by educated, when we think about youth, we've got a major program looking at youth. It's not just the literacy in maths, actually. A lot of the problem for young South Africans leaving school, and we're very worried about the group that's come out. We're going to try to, the Department of Education clearly is trying to fix the system of education. In the meantime, we've had millions of people leaving school, and they're at loose ends. Now, one of the critical things in a services economy, remember I was saying that most jobs get created in fairly low-level services, is that ability to communicate, to search, to present yourself. So, for example, business process outsourcing training is fantastic training for people. I've seen young kids transform in a space of 6 weeks from someone who seems unemployable to someone who is now articulate, stands up straight, can answer the phone, and is now employable. Similarly, community care training is it's an amazing training. And I've again seen people transform. The people who train those people get really frustrated because they often find jobs somewhere else as a receptionist or something else. But it shows that that little bit of training, a month or 2 months, makes a huge difference in people's lives. So I'm speaking about those things. People are changing jobs all the time as well, so they need search skills. They need IT skills. But the whole issue of commerce becomes very important. When we think about job creation, often we're talking about public works and so on. Getting competitive infrastructure becomes very important. Our division looks a lot at the telecom sector, transport, energy, and water, and sometimes people wonder why. We finally have the airport sorted out at least. But the need to get less friction in the system, to make business transaction easier and easier to grow becomes critical. And urban infrastructure and the general infrastructure, the logistics to the ports, the rail into the ports, the ability to get time-sensitive exports out, that energy be regular, all of those things are absolutely critical, some of the most important investments that we can make. The second broad area is related to small business entry and competition, and I sometimes say, both to the public sector and to large corporates, if you can just pay in 30 days, that would make a huge difference to small business, because that's not what's happening. The state is committed to doing that, but we know that's not what's happening right now. So those are things that are within our power, but we're not doing it. Similarly, reducing the cost of regulatory compliance. The issue isn't necessarily to say we don't want to have labor regulation and so on. But the point is, let's look at SARS as a leading example to say, let's make it easier to pay tax. Let's make it easier to do the things that the state would like and not add on additional costs. Now, finally, reducing the cost of living becomes absolutely critical. Now, there's a huge debate right now because there's a lot of wage negotiations and strike action about rising wage costs. Now, it's very easy to say that 50,000 or 60,000 is too much for somebody, but actually it's not that easy to live in South Africa on less than that. People do, and they survive, but that's not a way of growing your human capital base, and that's a critical thing. If we want inclusive growth, it fundamentally assumes that you want people to be eating, educated, and living in a reasonable way. So one of the most critical things that needs to happen is that we need to start looking at ways of getting higher quality but lower cost goods to low income consumers and essentially reducing the cost of living. In the short run, and I'm sure I need to stop now, I wanted to raise one thing, which was the role of special employment programs. And again, that's partly because this particular event is supporting Project NOAA, which is a perfect example. That issue of strengthening community-based delivery is absolutely critical, and ways in which people can get involved, it's not always just helping orphans particularly and so on, but it's just doing things like financial management training to NGOs would completely change the landscape of community-based organization in this country and create millions of jobs. Thank you.